Welcome to Urban Legends, and in tonight's video, we're exploring one of the most chilling stories to emerge from modern folklore, a tale born on the dark backroads, where an ordinary night takes a sinister turn, and a single sound in the darkness changes everything. This is the disturbing legend of the Hook. The story of the Hook begins late on a Friday night, where a young couple are parked in a quiet, secluded area just outside of town, a place known as Lover's Lane. The car is stopped under the trees, and the couple are enjoying some alone time as the radio plays softly in the background. The night is dark and still, and everything feels private and safe, until a sudden announcement broadcasts over the radio. The voice is serious, and the announcer warns that an extremely dangerous man has escaped from a nearby institution for the mentally ill. He is described as a deranged killer who has a steel hook in place of one of his hands. The police advise everyone to stay inside, lock their doors, and report any suspicious activity. The girl in the car gets nervous as soon as she hears the news. She says they should leave right away, that it's too risky to be out there with someone like that on the loose, especially as the institution is nearby. The boy laughs it off at first, saying it's probably nothing, just some radio scare story designed to keep people inside. He tries to calm her down and makes a joke about the situation, but she doesn't laugh. The wind outside seems to pick up, and the trees shift and creak. Then, in the middle of the uneasy atmosphere, they both think they hear something. It sounds like a faint scraping noise, or maybe the sound of metal against metal. The boy brushes it off again, saying it's just the branches, or maybe an animal, but the girl insists she wants to go home. The tension starts to rise, and finally, out of frustration and a bit of fear, the boy agrees. He starts the car and drives off, faster than usual. The girl keeps glancing out the window, clearly still on edge, while the boy tries to make light conversation to distract her. It's not until they pull into her driveway, where the porch light glows softly in the dark, that things seem to calm down. He gets out to walk her to the door when he stops dead in his tracks. There, hanging from the passenger door handle, is a solid steel hook, the metal glinting faintly in the light. The girl sees it too, and for a moment, neither of them can speak. The realization hits them at the same time that the sound they heard wasn't the wind, it was the Hookman. The escaped killer had been right next to their car, reaching for the handle just before they drove away. In a darker variation of the story, the boy gets out to investigate after hearing a sound, leaving the girl alone in the locked car. She waits for him to return and hears tapping noises on the roof. When the police eventually arrive to help, they tell her not to look back as they lead her away. When she inevitably does, she sees her boyfriend's mangled body hanging upside down, suspended from a tree by a rope, his fingers or shoes brushing against the metal, making the noises she'd heard. In another variation, the noise isn't from above, but from beside her. The girlfriend sits frozen in the car while something keeps thumping or scraping at the windows. When help arrives, she sees the boyfriend dead just outside, his head repeatedly banged against the car door or window by the killer. Sometimes his throat has been cut, other times his body is dragged across the roof or hood, leaving bloody streaks. This detail often replaces the hook entirely but keeps the same structure of isolation, fear, and a horrific reveal that comes too late. The Hook urban legend may sound far-fetched, but it was partially inspired by real events. The Texarkana Moonlight Murders were a series of brutal attacks that struck the border town of Texarkana in the spring of 1946. Between February and May, an unknown man, nicknamed the Phantom Killer, targeted mostly young couples parked on quiet roads at night, killing 5 people and wounding 3 others. His crimes sparked one of the largest manhunts in Texas history and plunged the town into fear. The first attack happened on February 22nd, when Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean Leary were beaten and assaulted by a masked man, but both survived. A month later, on March 24th, Richard Griffin and Polly Ann Moore were found shot to death in their car. On April 14th, teenagers Paul Martin and Betty Jo Booker were murdered after leaving a dance, both killed with the same .32 caliber pistol. The final attack came on May 3rd, when Virgil and Katie Starks were shot through their farmhouse window. Virgil died, but Katie escaped despite serious wounds. After that, the phantom vanished without a trace. Police investigated hundreds of suspects, focusing on a man named Yowl Swinney, but they never gathered enough evidence to charge him. The crimes left Texarkana paralyzed with fear. Residents locked doors, bought guns, and refused to go out after dark. The murders were never solved, and the legend of the Phantom Killer endures today, remembered in stories, documentaries, and heavily inspired the 1976 film, The Town That Dreaded Sundown. When you look at how the Hookman legend changed over time and why it still captivates people, you can see that it's more than just a scary story, it's a mirror of shifting fears and social values. The legend first gained traction in the 1950s and 60s, when teenagers had new freedom thanks to cars and drive-in culture. Parents and communities were anxious about young people being out late, far from supervision, and the story of a killer stalking couples on lovers' lanes worked perfectly as both entertainment and a warning. It let adults pass along moral lessons, like don't go too far and don't stay out too late, without saying it directly. Over the years, the story adapted to the changing world around it. The hook sometimes became a knife, a metal claw, or just the sound of scraping fingernails on the car roof, but the structure stayed the same, of two people alone in the dark, in the sense that something terrible is watching from just beyond the trees. The reason it has survived for so long is that it taps into fears that never really go away. The Hookman embodies the dread of isolation, the fear of being trapped, and the terror that danger might be closer than you think. It takes an ordinary setting and turns it into something unsafe. That sudden shift from normal to horrifying is what makes the story so effective. It reminds listeners that security is fragile and that the safe world can crack open without warning. At the same time, people love hearing it because it offers a thrill without real risk. Sitting around a campfire or watching a movie, they can let themselves feel fear, knowing they're protected by the act of storytelling itself. Every retelling reshapes the legend to fit new times and new audiences, keeping it alive not because the Hookman himself is real, but because the emotions he stirs always are. The legend of the Hook has spread through movies, books, and television, growing into one of the most recognizable urban legends in American culture. The story found new life in films like I Know What You Did Last Summer, The Town That Dreaded Sundown, Urban Legend, and episodes of shows like Supernatural and Are You Afraid of the Dark? It is retold in fresh ways, updating the setting but keeping the same core idea. Each retelling reflects the style and fears of its time, with the grainy realism of the 1970s, the glossy teenage horror of the 1990s, and the self-aware storytelling of the 2000s. Through film and television, the Hookman became more than a campfire story. He turned into a lasting figure in popular horror, one that audiences could recognize instantly from just the sound of scraping metal or the sight of a fogged-up window. Even now, the legend continues to change with the times. In modern retellings, the girl in the car is no longer helpless, she fights back or outsmarts the killer. Other versions turn the Hookman into a ghost, a spirit of revenge, or a cautionary echo of some local tragedy. The story keeps evolving because people keep finding new ways to tell it and new meanings to attach to it. What began as a whispered warning for teenagers has become a flexible piece of folklore that fits each generation's fears, whether it's strangers in the dark, the loss of control, or the danger that hides behind ordinary moments. The Hookman endures because the world keeps changing, but the feeling of being watched from the shadows never really goes away.